if I told you that one president literally ignored the Supreme Court, kicked thousands of people off their homelands, and rewrote democracy to benefit himself, and we still put his face on money? Yeah, buckle up. Today we're talking about Andrew Jackson, the guy whose legacy shows just how dangerous a powerful president can be. When people talk about Andrew Jackson, you usually hear he was a war hero. But here's the thing. What people don't actually know is that the presidency of Andrew Jackson was one of chaos. My thesis? Andrew Jackson's legacy is one of inequality and injustice, one that sets dangerous precedents in American history because of his abuse of power, violence towards Native Americans, and economic disaster. Let's unpack that. One thing's for certain. President Andrew Jackson loved calling himself a defender of the common man, but his democracy definitely did not include everyone, only white men. In 1830, Jackson passed the Indian Removal Act, and this forced thousands of Native Americans off their land and into the southeast region of the United States, land that Jackson wanted for the betterment of the U.S. The Cherokees, a tribe of Indians living in Georgia, challenged this law in court. In the landmark case, Worcester versus Georgia, John Marshall declared that Georgia couldn't make the Cherokee leave. However, Jackson didn't really care. Instead of enforcing this ruling, his literal job, I might add, he sided with the states. Pretty much, it was an 1830s version of a presidential temper tantrum. Without protection from Jackson, the Cherokees were left defenseless as later President Martin Van Buren ordered the U.S. Army to lead 15,000 Cherokee off their land and into Oklahoma, resulting in the death of 4,000 Indians in what we now know as the Trail of Tears. So, when Jackson said he represented the common man, we should have asked, what man? The damage did not stop there. President Jackson's economic policies were reckless. Andrew Jackson hated the Second Bank of the United States. He believed it to be corrupt, so he weakened the bank by removing federal deposits, leading to the bank to be dismantled as its charter wasn't renewed. Without regulation, state pet banks printed huge amounts of paper money with nothing to back it. Prices skyrocketed, speculation exploded. It wasn't good. This, as well as the Tariff of Abominations, was one of the main causes of the Panic of 1837, an economic crisis that caused increased prices, high unemployment rates, and halted westward expansion. Conveniently, this occurred right as Jackson left office, leaving everyday Americans to suffer the consequences. Jackson did not protect the common people, but rather, his decisions hurt them. Finally, there's Jackson's obsession with power. He used his presidential veto more than any other previous president of the United States, not just to reject laws, but reject anything that didn't suit his personal agenda. There were critics who drew political cartoons of him as a king, and let's just say that they had a point. Before I mention the Tariff of Abominations, one of Jackson's economic policies that raised the prices of goods, having a harmful effect on the consumer. This tariff was so bad that in 1828, South Carolina declared the Tariff of Abominations unconstitutional, raising questions about the process of nullification, the precedent set by the Kentucky Resolution that states can invalidate federal law, ignore it within their borders if deemed unconstitutional. Jackson thought this was an effort to take power from him and did not agree with South Carolina whatsoever. So instead of taking the issue to court or maybe talking with South Carolina first, Jackson told his Secretary of War to prepare military action, persuading Congress to pass a bill that allowed him to take back power in South Carolina. Sounds familiar? No, like a certain someone in office. Anyway, Jackson issued a proclamation saying nullification was treason, though quickly the rational people stepped in and allowed for compromise. Jackson would back off and lower the tariff, and South Carolina would move on as well. Jackson also turned democracy into a loyalty Congress. He introduced the spoils system, the idea where a president appoints people into office that are loyal to him and him only. He fired many experienced workers just to replace them with supporters, not experts, just fans. He shifted democracy away from best person for the job to best person for my team, an idea that fuels American politics today. So, should Andrew Jackson be on the $20 bill, or in textbooks as a hero of democracy? In my opinion, no way. He should be remembered as a warning. When one leader grabs too much power, democracy becomes a suggestion, not a system. Jackson left behind the idea that a president can ignore the courts, override Congress, reward friends and publish critics, and claim it's what the people want as a shield from accountability. Jackson didn't just rule in his time, but he created a roadmap for democratic backsliding that we see today. And I'll admit, there are many things to take into consideration when thinking about Jackson's legacy as a president. But in my opinion, Jackson's legacy reminds us that presidents who break the rules don't just change history. They change what rules future presidents think they can break. So yeah, maybe it's time we stop celebrating Andrew Jackson and we start learning from the damage that he left behind. Instead of taking or the Supreme Court. Thank you.